Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Well, good morning. This is Stan coming to you from Gainesville. And today on Light Talk, we're going to discuss salaries, showing your stuff, strangers in paradise, high expectations, and Gobos in a park yet? All on Light Talk.
And this is David, coming to you from, yes, the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. Back at sea level, thank God. I function much better in sea level. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard they call us.
And Stan is in the background there saying, hey, man.
I'm just in the peanut gallery.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 276. So, Stan, how you doing, man? You're filling in today for our brother, Zach, who was originally scheduled today. And, of course, for people who listened to last week, we learned that Zach's son had COVID, and guess what?
He still does.
He still does, and so does Zach.
Zach said he's getting better, but he was coughing might kind of affect his ability to, I think he said he would drive the editor of Light Talk crazy with all the coughing.
Me.
So we know who that is. Right?
That's
I'm
right.
I'm doing okay. I just got off a very nice call, Zoom with the infamous Beverly Emmons, where I'm working on a reconstruction project with some students, and that's been fun. And I'm turning down projects. No, I'm saying yes to projects again. David's going to beat me up. Saying, don't you have enough?
Really? Retire, for God's sake.
I'm working on it. Jeez.
Anyway, we have a big show for you today. So let's get started. And we're going to start today with news. That's right. And the big news today, just breaking, that's why we have that little breaking news sound in the background, is that on Tuesday, July 11th, 2022, Strand Lighting, LLC, voluntarily filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in a Dallas, Texas court. Steve, were you there?
No, they did not invite me.
Well, you could have been like a roving reporter.
Yeah, you could have been in Stephen Colbert kind of thing. Yeah.
Let me just say, I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on there, so I wouldn't.
Isn't that the essence of our industry? Smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors. That's right. Salamoniac. Anyway, yes, they officially voluntarily filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. But there are now many rumors and discussions swirling around the industry about why and what this means. So Plaza, and this comes from the Plaza website, reached out to Signify, who's the ownership of the Strand brand, I like that Strand brand, to clarify the situation. And they told Plaza that this filing is a part of the ongoing unifying branding effort of Signify to centralize its entertainment lighting products in a single legal entity, which is called, drumroll please, Stan, Verilight LLC.
Yay.
And we focus on the Verilight brand for all new entertainment products. Well, I think this is kind of interesting because for decades, Strand was maybe the largest name in the entertainment lighting industry. And now they've dumped the name Strand. They're throwing it in the trash. They're completely defacing it for Verilight.
I think they're just tired of pushing the money around, so just bringing it all together.
You think it's a money situation?
Yeah, they got to push the money over here, then push the money over there, then push the money over there. Okay, let's just make one big company. We don't have to have all these bank accounts.
I mean, look at the names they had a couple years ago. It was a Signify brand, a Strand brand, a Verilight brand, a Showline brand, a division of Philips.
Showline, Celicon was one of their brands.
Celicon, I think, evolved into Showline, the New Zealand company.
But now it's all going to be called Verilight LLC. So how do you all like that? That's pretty.
It's a more
impressive.
recognizable global brand name. Makes sense. But Strand has been around since when? I remember when it was called Rank Strand.
Yeah, since the 20s, I think.
Right, but London is based out of England, right?
Yeah, it's out of England, right. So anyway, that's our big news of the day.
I heard you got a letter, David.
Yes, letters to Light Talk Central. That's right. So today we have a letter from Stuart Schwarzmeter. master electrician for the Stillwater Baptist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it reads, Brothers, I am writing to clear up a piece of inaccurate information that you broadcasted on your show. That's not a first. That's for damn sure. A couple of weeks ago, Brother Steve said that monkeys do not get rabies. This is not true. My sister Lily was bitten by a monkey when she was only 18. She approached a strange organ grinder on the streets of Barcelona, and his monkey tried to molest her. As she was fighting off the monkey, the little bastard bit her on the ankle. After a few days, she started foaming at the mouth and became very irritable. She ended up biting her boyfriend, and the both of them ended up in the hospital where they were both diagnosed with rabies. They got their shots, but neither one of them has been the same since. Now, Mama also thought that monkeys did not get rabies and thought that Lily was acting strange due to that new boyfriend who influenced her with the devil's ways. Apparently, Mama was intimately involved with a man when she was in her early 20s, which also caused irritability and uncontrolled saliva foaming. But I told her, no, Mama, that was something else. But I digress. So please be careful about those monkeys you have in your studio. If Brother David says they have rabies, they have rabies. Just keeping it real. Love your show. Stuart Schwartzmeter, master electrician for the Stillwater Baptist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I take that a little personally, the monkeys in your studio.
There are monkeys in our studio. We hear them every week.
Well, I'm always fooling around and I'm curious, so I don't know if he's referring to me.
I think they ate the ducks. That's the problem. But anyway, Steve, do you have any answer to Stuart?
Well, I mean, how do we know it was a monkey that bit her? She simply says it was a monkey. It could have been a chihuahua.
A chihuahua.
It could have been a squirrel. It could have been any number of things. I'm looking back at the Center for Disease Control here, and the odds rabies from and I'm quoting here, rabies from non-human primates is extremely rare and uncommon because primates do not easily contract rabies. Non-human.
However, so it is possible.
However, I guess this one was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
In Barcelona,
got the rabies and gave it to some. What do you mean? How do you refer to her? As young daughter or something? She's 18 years old. She knows better than to mess
Lily,
with the monkey.
His sister.
I thought you were going to say she was 6. Now, this is an adult going up there, and she's pulling a euro out of the monkey's cup, and the monkey brought forth Armageddon on her.
So you're saying that Lily deserved the rabies? That's what you're saying, Steve?
Well, I mean, this is true in the theater, right? You get that close to a trained professional actor or designer, you deserve to contract whatever you get.
And I think that people have a much higher chance of contracting something horrible from an actor than they do from a designer. Just my opinion. Anyway, let's get on with the show. Steve has our first question.
Jonathan from Wichita writes, does anyone want to be in a room with strangers anymore? I mean, I go to karaoke every Thursday night. Is live theater about to die? Well, Jonathan, I say no. In fact, I think the COVID has been good for us. I think what's happened is that theater has found a whole new audience, and that audience is streaming. So I think theaters now are back up and running. Broadway's happy. Nevada, Las Vegas is going. I think theater is back. I think it's always going to be there. But this has given them a new way to deliver content to an audience. So, I enjoy going to the movies, and I enjoy going to see Live from the Met, in which I see a rebroadcast of a Metropolitan Opera performance at my local Cinemark. It's not the same as being there, but it's a whole lot cheaper than getting in an airplane and flying up to New York and paying for a ticket to go see it. So I think this is, in a strange, bizarro way, going to be good for theater and increase their revenues and reach an audience they would have never reached unless they were forced to think about this in a different way.
Steve, I totally agree. I totally agree with you, man.
And I think you better brush up on your lighting for the camera skills.
That's right. But I think that, yes, there will be live theater. It's not going to die. It's totally not going to die. However, it's going to be, much more selective, smaller audiences. It looks like, with this new variant of COVID, that things are going to get crazy again because you can catch this multiple times. Your body is not creating antibodies for this variant, and people are catching it now multiple times. I just had it a few weeks ago. I may get it again. If I had that variant.
Would you like to get it again? I think we can work that out.
I don't want to get it again. It wasn't too bad for me, but I don't want to go through that again. And, because I took the Paxlovid, and everything tasted like metal for about a week. but who wants to go through that again? And poor Zach has it now, but he's getting better. Everybody don't freak out. Zach is, doing well. He's just going through it.
Which other Lumen brothers and sisters have had it? I've not had it. Steve?
Yes, I got it right after LDI.
You did?
Oh. I got it the very first year it was out. I went and visited all the Chinese booths, and I came back, and I was like sick.
You got it from a Chinese monkey. That's what I think what happened. Ellen's got to stop allowing wildlife into that damn convention hall.
Especially chickens.
Yeah.
But unless we digress, I just want to say that I'm working on a show right now, and the theater just completely surprised me. Got a grant through the federal government and through the local arts commission, and they have purchased 3 robotic cameras and a switching and editing suite. They're putting that in, and they're documenting everything, and they're planning on having a whole secondary season ticket sale of looking at their stuff online.
There you go. That's where we're heading. Brush up on your lighting for the camera skills.
Well, I don't even think you have to brush up on your lighting for the camera skills. I think cameras these days are so good.
That's true.
That we're not having to worry about that. So I think if the show is decently lit, and I think most LORT theaters who might be thinking about doing this, their shows are more than decently lit. I think there can be a really good product coming out of it. The question, again, of course, is, where is equity falling on this, and where is United Scenic Artists falling on this? But I think clearly with the investments being made, those little bugs have been worked out.
More money for everyone then.
We just need to learn how to share it.
Well, traditionally theater, doesn't pay people very well.
No.
Right?
Still doesn't.
That sounds like a segue into Stan's question.
Absolutely. Go for it, Stan.
Well, Matt in Pensacola writes, how much should I pay my assistant or associate designer? Wow.
As much as you can.
There's the short answer right there. As much as you can, Well, first of all, I guess you got to get paid a reason. Well, here's a question. Question for the question. Is it coming out of your pocket? So it sounds like he phrased the question as how much should I pay my assistant or associate? So that means it's coming out of your pocket. Well, if that's the case, let's answer the question the way he asked it. So if that's the case, are you getting enough to pay your assistant or your associate what you think their value is? So in the first case, set your fee thinking about your overhead, right? Not just what you need. I mean, it's sort of like we live in I know there's a lot of people who want to switch this country to socialism. I don't think that's going to happen. Well, this country's always been half capitalistic and half socialistic. So you're going to have to make sure that you negotiate a fee for yourself that's reasonable, and that within that you're accounting for your profit margin, right? Your overhead, right? And then to take care of the people who make it possible for you to do your job. So how much with a number? I think that's a spectrum. If you're living in Davidstown in Los Angeles, that's one number. If you're living in Dallas, that's another number. If you're living in Gainesville, that's another number. If you're living in New York, that's another number. So you've got to be aware of what the going cost of living, I would say, I would not do this. Let me say what I wouldn't do. I would not say this is what the market is in your town. I think that's a way to sort of minimize what you pay. I think you got to look at the value of what the person brings to your work. And then in your mind, taking into account where you are, the cost of living, what most people get paid, blah, blah, blah. and then do what's right. And then you got to think about short-term versus long-term. Is this a transactional act? I'm hiring this person one time and forget, it's short-term, or is this somebody I want to have as a relationship for long-term, in which case they're an investment, not just a fee. So there's a couple of things to chew on.
Well, what if we chew on Gainesville, Florida, and you've been hired, and let's say a theater is offering you $5,000 to design lights for their show. What percentage of that do you give to your assistant?
That's a great way to put it. A percentage is an interesting notion. Because I don't do much theater anymore, but I do hire people in my consultancy. So let me use that formulation, if I might. Let's say I'm hiring someone to draft the work, which is what I do a lot of. Well, I can make a pretty good estimate based on experience how many hours are going to be needed on that project because I've done it myself. So I know about how many hours. So I calculate the hours first, right? And you can do the same thing in theater. How many hours is the person going to be working or programming or whatever it is? And then I take that number and I put what's called a premium on that, which is overhead, because I'm paying insurance, I'm paying overhead to operate. So maybe I'm going to put 10%, 15%, 16% on top of that in terms of the hours, right? And then I'm going to look at what the hourly rate is. So what the hourly rate's going to be what I think the person's worth, right? Percentage, I guess in my field right now, they're going to get 20% of what the overall fee is, hourly fee. So whatever I'm getting as the hourly fee for the company, they're going to see at least 20% of that hourly rate in their rate. So because you asked me for a percentage. And they're going to get that by the hours that I estimate. And then when they invoice me, I always tell them, don't invoice me for a time when you're learning how to do something. Invoice me only for productive hours. And I think that's relatively fair.
Well, that's interesting because, in the theater business, we don't work on percentages. You're right. It's, or hourly. We really don't work pretty much on hourly. Everybody assumes that's going to be a 6-day production week. And I think a lot more has to do with what the scope of the assistant's work is. Sometimes I hire an assistant just to track moving lights. Sometimes I hire 2 assistants, one to take note, maybe track the follow spots, or even design the follow spots sometimes, and then one person just to deal with tracking moving lights. And that way, you split up the work. But if you're expecting one person to do all of that, which is almost impossible, although I've known assistants who have done that, then you better pay them higher. I think it really comes down to this. If you're not working a union gig where assistants are covered already, or you're working a gig where the producer's paying for the assistant, which most of the time happens in my world right now where I'm at, you have to figure out that if you don't get a high enough fee to pay the assistant a good wage, then you shouldn't be hiring an assistant. You do that show by yourself. So you really can't say, okay, I'm making $2,000 for the show. I'm going to pay the assistant 20%. That's what, $400 for like 2 weeks work. That doesn't cut it. That's below minimum wage. So then you shouldn't be hiring an assistant, or you should just give that assistant your fee, right? If you absolutely need an assistant. So you need to go in there when you're negotiating a show, understanding that it's going to cost me $2,000 to hire an assistant for these 2 weeks. And therefore, I need at least $4,000 or whatever as a fee. You can't let an assistant work for to be underpaid on shows. What do you think, Steve?
I'm doing some fast math here.
We're lighting designers. We don't know math.
No, it's really weird because I think the number you threw out there, I'm just running this, is the same number that the federal government puts out for what assistant line designers should make.
No way. There's actually a rate?
The federal government says that for 2 weeks' work, we should be paying our assistants $1,574.44.
See, I said $2,000 for 2 weeks. I said $1,000 a week.
I have a question. Is this for the federal government? I would doubt has a rate on theatrical line designers, do they?
They do.
They do.
It's $19.68 an hour.
Wow.
Wow.
Interesting.
I didn't know this.
for you, Stan, they have a rate for you, and your low number should be $15 an hour, and your high number should be $250 an hour.
Well, we all know Stan pays $250 an hour.
What?
Well, no, I'm basing that on I'm basing that on experience. Clearly, Stan gets more than $15 an hour.
Yes, of course.
But I
What
mean,
classification are you putting me in? A theatrical lighting designer?
Yep. It's interesting because in lighting designer they got a range
Sure.
of like goofy, but assistant lighting designer they're specific $19.68
What
an
is the
hour.
theater consultant get? What does the theater consultant get?
I do not see the theater consultant number here because I didn't.
That's
look
very
at it.
in there.
interesting. I have to check out that website.
They're in
But-
there.
Well, I mean, I knew an interior designer back in 1982, and in '82 he was getting $250
An hour?
an hour as an interior designer, and he was paying his assistants $125 an hour. And so, if you extrapolate, I'm sure he's certainly not making $250 an hour today. He's making more than that if he's successful, and I suspect he is.
And interior designers are licensed by the state. It's a licensed profession, which is sort of like an interesting point because, like in architectural lighting, they've been pushing for that to become a licensure. Particularly, I think in Texas, there was a big push for that. In fact, maybe I'm misremembering.
Well, who's the crazy senator? I think from Kentucky. Besides Mitch McConnell.
Grant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rand Paul.
he didn't get licensed as a dentist, so he created his own licensing department. So he is self-licensed. He is the president of the licensing board, and his wife is the vice president.
So
In
that's
Kentucky?
fun.
There's no licensure for
Kentucky.
dentistry in Kentucky, for real?
He's not a dentist. Oh, is he a dentist?
No, there is. He just couldn't get it. He couldn't get his licensing.
Oh, okay.
He couldn't pass the exams.
Talk about
So he said, "To
extreme
hell with that."
libertarian, right? Okay.
There you go. I don't believe in
Interesting. But the rate that back in the day when I started my company, I didn't know what my hourly rate should be. And it was really, you have to sort of look at what does an engineer get? What does an architect get? That's the field I'm working in, right? What does an acoustical consultant get? But it's interesting that you talk about hours, David. I wonder if you took some of your better paid gigs and your union negotiated gigs and you really logged your hours and you did the math. What
did.
would you guess what is your hourly rate?
I've done it. I did it for my students on my show at La Scala. From starting research for that show all the way through, rehearsals and meetings and everything else, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I made, for that show, I think I made about $22,000 for that show. Okay, and this was a long time ago. It was back
That's
in
a
2000.
good fee, even then. That was a very,
but
very
that's
good
pretty
fee.
much what opera lighting designers make for
And what is
large companies. Anywhere ranged between like 15,000 and 30,000. That's what lighting designers make for large companies in opera. That being
what is
said,
Yeah.
I did the whole figured out, and I showed them on the board, and it ended up being $12.37 an hour, which was lower
$12.
which was lower than you would get at like In-N-Out Burger. And at In-N-Out Burger, you actually get health care.
So this raises a very important question about most of the world, even if you're flipping burgers at In-N-Out Burger, operates on an hourly rate.
Right.
And one could legitimately ask, what the heck is wrong with our profession?
It depends on the size of the show. I mean, I spent a lot of hours
No, I'm
on
asking
that
a
show.
larger question. Why do we not think about hourly rates? The IATSE sure does. If you're a stagehand,
Oh, that's
you're
an hourly
paid by
rate.
the hour,
Absolutely.
right? So
And
why
overtime.
is it
If you go overtime, meal penalty, all that stuff.
correct? So why designers? Why do we accept that mentality in this society?
It's
Because we're weenies.
There you go. Steve's got it.
San Francisco bus drivers make more than that.
that's right.
I looked at, when I start looking at the amount of money that your average designer makes, you're better off being a San Francisco bus driver. Mm-hmm. It takes us maybe 57 weeks to equal their salary Plus, on top of that, San Francisco bus drivers have, they only work 47 weeks out of the year. They have paid vacation, they have paid medical. So, and they don't have to go to grad school. They're just so much better.
Right.
I think it's because people undercut each other left and right. Yes, I will work for your stinking little theater company and charge you $500, and I will hang and focus and queue. And you want me to run the show? Sure, I'll do that too. So I think the world is flooded, for better or for worse, companies that don't have any money.
Yeah, I mean, to Steve's point, because somebody will do it. So the answer is simple. Stop doing that. But some people will.
Well, I saw a rock and roll company that did that. They did a major tour. They bid $250,000 to do it. They did not get the tour. Someone underbid them by, it was $92,000.
Yeah.
The company that bid $92,000 is bankrupt today.
There you go.
The other company is still in business.
There you go. And I'm still in business.
And I'm out.
For now, anyway.
No. I mean, I was going to make a point that that's why we have union minimums. So Roberta from Napoli asks, oh, I miss Napoli.
Oh,
my
the
God.
pizza.
I love Napoli. Anyway.
The vegetables.
Hey, Stan, should we tell the story about the first night when I got drunk and I got lost and I couldn't find my
we'd
flat?
have to. It'll provide more editing work for you.
And I called Stan up. Can I sleep with you and Pam? And he said,
I'm locked
no.
I'm locked out of my apartment. I do
Locked
remember
me
that,
out of
yes.
my apartment. Damn. I had to rent a night at a hotel because I could not find my apartment. All right. Roberta.
You're saying Stan and Pam did not let you sleep on the
they
floor
wouldn't
like
let
a
me
poodle?
sleep on the floor. They said, you're going to
did.
rough it.
Oh, that's
did.
cold. That was
It was
cold.
cold. It was cold. You know, I'm still
He
affected
smelled
by it.
bad that night.
I did smell bad, but there was a whole nother situation going on. I don't want to talk about it. It had to do with Napoli on the first night. Okay, Roberta from Napoli asks, I am designing my first production at the university this fall, The Odd Couple. You remember that show?
Yes, love it.
I don't think the play gives much opportunity to show what I can do. Any suggestions?
Oh.
What can you do, Roberta? Show me what you can do, Roberta.
It's about you. It's about.
Is it
who's
about
asked this
you,
question?
Roberta?
Who asked this question?
Roberta.
Roberta.
Roberta. It's not about you.
It ain't about you, Roberta. Okay, let me just say something. There are no small shows. There are only small designers.
Only small
Wait a
designers.
second. I heard that
there
before.
You go.
How to do something
Right.
like that. Why can't I do a nuclear explosion in The Odd Couple? Because it's not Chernobyl. That's why.
I really want to get those lasers up somehow. Can they come out of
Okay.
Felix's eyes when he gets angry?
I think we've ragged on Roberta much too long here.
All right, this requires a serious answer.
Okay, so let's take this as a learning opportunity. Let me say something. I just did 2 shows. And one was very complex. It was this huge musical, very complex, lots of lighting effects, all that other stuff. You know, it got rave reviews. I was mentioned, which is not always a good thing, but I happened to be mentioned in a very nice way in the reviews. And then I did another show, which was an operetta, and the lighting was very simple. It basically had 3 interiors. I did, 3 atmospheres for those interiors. I did make some changes, and there were cues and all that, and I did have fun in Act 2 and all that. But there was a beauty of doing these simple atmospheres. And let me tell you something, that shows a lot. It shows a lot about your skill if you can pull off a beautifully lit atmosphere, interior atmosphere, which The Odd Couple just happens to be an interior atmosphere, right? So, no, maybe you're not going to be able to do the nuclear explosion or the mirror ball or the chases or all that other crap, right? But you're doing a very tastefully lighting design job. To me, that means a lot because I work hard doing these things. I work hard creating these simple atmospheres.
In some ways, it's harder.
Yes, in many ways, it's hard to stand. You're absolutely right. So, Roberta, don't think it's just lights up, lights down, and everything is flat lit. It's not. An atmosphere has light bouncing around it. It has different parts of reflection and different colors are coming off the walls. You got to think about that, and you make it this great, beautiful atmosphere that the actors can tell the story in.
It has times of day. It has rising tension. It has comedy. It has conflict. It has all that stuff happening, and you're there to help underpin that story.
Yeah. Steve, how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm going to throw down the gauntlet to Roberta, and I'm going to say, send us some photographs and show us your stuff.
Yeah.
So your challenge here is no unsightly shadows on the walls. I don't want to see any reflections in the little knickknacks or the pictures that are hung on the walls. I don't want to see any glare when I go over to a door. So you're showing us your stuff. You're just going to make this seem like we're just walking out of one room into the living room, and there are Felix and Oscar and the Pigeon Sisters. So that's where you're going to have to put your imagination and your skill. How can you control a difficult? I mean, I think interiors, I think comedies, I think are really difficult to light. I'm not discounting the skill that goes into a musical or the skill that goes into lighting Hamlet, but they're very different. It's a very different skill set. And to light a comedy and do it well and to do it, you'd be surprised how many people will call you up and say, I just saw your work and it was just perfect. I want to hire you to do Count a Hot Tin Roof, or you pick it, Head of Gobbler.
Well, if you didn't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and today we are sponsored by...
All the way from south of the border, it's Bad Hombre Stage Productions. Sometimes tension can run a little high on the set. Tech and dress, well, they bring their toll. A sound cue gets called late. The follow spot can't seem to find the correct actor, and the director, well, just insulted the playwright. As you can see, things can get out of hand fast, and feelings can be hurt. But before it comes to that, let Bad Hombre Stage Productions come to the rescue with La Luce Libre de Brazo. You heard me right, kittens. An arm wrestling kit. You will get a piece of chalk and 2 sharp knives. Draw a circle on a table, place the knives in the patented holders, and let the fun begin. Now the LD and the stage manager can settle that calling conflict with honor. Watch the costume designer take on the TD over that rough floor that just ripped a hem. Cheer as the playwright draws first blood.
Yay!
And the director. Cheer as the playwright draws first blood with the director. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. La Luce Libre de Brazo, only from Bad Hombre Stage Productions.
And now, back to Light Talk. Good one.
Well, the sound of those rabid monkeys means that once again it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about why are student designers held to higher standards and expectations by the faculty than student actors and directors? Well, what did this come from?
I disagree with your premise.
You disagree?
I think they're all right off the bat. I think the faculty picks on everyone.
No.
I think they hold actors, designers, and directors all at a different. Nobody wants to take the time to let people learn. I want a Broadway show, damn it.
Well, I think there's truth in that, but how come? I'll throw this tennis ball over the net. So how come that we often hear a critique of the designer's preparation or the designer's this or the technician's that or the stage manager this coming from the performance side of the house? And rarely, if ever, do you hear a critique from the designer or technician side of the house of the performers. Hey, that dance move was really clunky. Hey, that actor was like, that was a really boring scene. Well, that staging really sucked. You never hear that. It always seems to go one direction.
I agree with Stan.
Because we have breeding. We have breeding.
Breeding.
We would never We would never be that crass or insultive to our colleagues.
But we're willing to take it.
Oh, we're living
On
in
the
a fantasy
headset,
world.
we would be, but not in public.
Now, this does happen. It has continued to happen throughout my career. There's always little complaints about technicians or the stage management or whatever, but never about the actors. Okay? Now, Stan, you told me a very interesting theory this morning, which kind of makes sense, but it doesn't apply to me because I'll say it no matter what. I have no.
You're not normal.
I'm not normal. I'm definitely not normal.
We know that about you.
Yes.
Okay, so everybody who's listening, if you want to learn something really valuable, if you haven't heard of this, you should explore the Stanley Milgram experiment. That's Stanley, like me, but the last name is Milgram experiment that was conducted at Yale not long after World War II. I'll try and do this short, but go ahead there and learn about this thing called egocentric bias. Here's the takeaway from the psychological experiment, and frankly, most people, David accepted, cannot really unwire this. So when you're in a situation with an authority figure, and an authority figure asks you to do something that you would think is not right, immoral, unethical, whatever, and they particularly ask you to do it a little bit at a time, the fact is that the emotional pain that you will feel from not obeying your authority figure is greater than the emotional pain you will feel by not doing the right thing. And this is not true for everyone, but 90% of the time. And if you start to think about this in your own life, every time you're faced with a decision to make that you've been told to do by someone who is an authority figure in your life, you will consider, consciously or subconsciously, how disobeying will make you feel. And that pain is pretty great because we focus on our feelings about the decision rather than the influence we might have in the moment. So now the Stanley Milgram experiment was quite controversial, still is quite controversial. It was done at Yale, and there are modern equivalents of that experiment. So I say this because in this scenario where the director or the choreographer or whoever the admin is, they are your authority figure. And it's because you don't want to feel the pain of disobeying, you will usually do what they tell you, and you will usually not speak back for that reason. And the more aware you become of that, the more you can have greater influence over your life. I share that as a little bit of Stan wisdom for everyone to look that up.
See, David, don't play that game because I don't see another faculty member, whether they're a director or in a lot of cases an acting teacher playing like they're a director, or even a chair of a department as an authority figure to me. They are educators. The chair is an administrator educator, and I'm an educator. And we're all teaching students. So that gives another educator no right to tell me how terrible my student is and they should be better, because I would never say that about their students. And I don't, but I do mention, hey, you're being a hypocrite because we're all here for the same thing. Now, Steve, I know you're joking with us. I am sure that you have experienced something like this in all the years you've taught. Have you?
I think it comes down to, so it's a personal bias, and it just depends on who you're working with. But I'd like to say there are two types of directors. There is the director that we all know and love, and then there's the director who doesn't want tech to get in the way of rehearsal. And when things like this happen, it almost always comes from the latter, the director who does not want tech to get in the way of rehearsal. Wait, no, we can't take a note. We just got to push past it. No, I can't stop for anything. I can't get the show open. I worked with a director. I mean, this doesn't have to be at a university. I was working off Broadway, and the guy found out what time crew call was. And there he was.
With the actors.
He was there. He was there with actors at crew call going, well, if we can't be on stage, we can't open the show in 3 weeks. What are you talking about? It's the load. It's the load in, damn it. And he was like just losing his mind. And here comes the producer. Do you think you can find a compromise? No, you're the producer. You've got a union crew here, and this guy wants to rehearse with his actors.
Oh, my God.
And you're actually looking at me with a straight face, asking me if we can free up a couple of hours of time so he can get on stage. And this was daily.
Oh, my God.
It was daily.
Hey.
So, yeah, I mean, of course it happens. Of course it happens. And on the other side of this, we'll be positive about it. I mean, you could argue that the director understands the tremendous contribution that stage managers and technicians and designers give to a show. So if that show is in the least shaky mode, then he or she is reliant upon that stage manager to pull it together. So a missed cue, oh good heavens, the show's on the floor. We'll have to close because he's counting on these other people just to do their jobs flawlessly. And that's a dangerous position to take at a university.
It's totally dangerous. That's my point. This is a place for people to make mistakes and to feel safe to make mistakes. That's
and to learn and to grow. To learn and to grow.
And there's a difference between making a mistake and not being prepared.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is true. But, listen, we all make mistakes. I still make mistakes, for God's sake.
Well, sometimes not being prepared is a mistake.
You sold your Tesla years ago. You shouldn't have.
My Tesla stock. I sold the stock, not the Tesla. That's the problem. I'm talking about in the theater. I do make mistakes, of course. So I don't know. This, I think, just really burns me when this happens. I just think that people like to play like they're professional directors, and they think that the show is everything. And I'm talking about, I'm just talking about educational theater here. And they're not professional directors. In some cases they are, but unfortunately in a lot of universities they're not. They're acting teachers. And then they have the nerve to basically ask someone to be perfect. An 18-year-old who's learning how to be a stage manager, which I have always believed is the hardest job in the theater, to not miss a cue. That's going to happen. Okay, it just drives me crazy. Anyway, Steve has the last question of the day.
And it comes from Richard just down the road in McKinney, Texas. And Richard writes, is there any way to use a gobo with a par or a Fresnel? Funny you ask.
I thought this would be a quick one.
I'm going to move away from that. And what I'm going to imagine is that all you have is a par and a Fresnel, and you want to put a shadow someplace. So no, a gobo in a traditional sense, that little metal cutout thing that goes in the gate on the lamp side of the shutters. No, there's nothing there. So you can't put a metal device into that. But what you could do is use a Coukaloris. And if you haven't heard that term before, sometimes it's called a kook or a
Coukaloris. La Coukaloris. That one?
A Coukaloris traditionally is, when I see them, they're usually about 2 feet square. And it's usually maybe a sheet of 1/8-inch plywood. And in that plywood, an image has been cut. If you watch the original Star Trek series, you will see every now and then Captain Kirk walking down the hallway, and you'll see on the walls some blobs, and you go, oh, it's a gobo. No, that's Coukaloris. So we have this wooden thing that has some holes cut in it, and it can be more elaborate than that, but think of a breakup pattern. That is placed on a stand, and that stand is placed on the downstage side of a Fresnel. So the Fresnel is shining through that board with the cutouts in it. And the further away the kook is from the Fresnel, the softer the image, the closer it is, the sharper the image. So a kook, you could do that and place gobos with it. The origin story of this is the cinematographer George Cukor, Cukor. He was shooting something and he wanted some dimensioning there. He had a stagehand hold an A ladder in front of a Fresnel to cast some shadows on the talent and really liked what he saw. So the next day when they came back, he wanted some more shadows, and the stagehand, being smarter than the average bear, decided the ladder was too heavy to hold, and overnight he had cut some slats and different images into half a dozen pieces of plywood so you could pop them on a stand in front of a Fresnel. So a Coukaloris is what you want, not a gobo if you have a party. I don't know that a Couk would work with a park can. I've never tried that. I guess it would, but it certainly works very well with a Fresnel.
I'm really great to learn that word, Steve. I knew that technique, but I didn't know the name of it, so I looked it up, and I'm seeing that the history is attributed to a cinematographer named George Folsey.
George Folsey. I mean, there's two conflicting ideas there, that it's Couker or Folsey, and they both could have done it about the same time. So both of these, I think it's actually Folsey who has the latter story, and Couker has something similar.
Well, you might need to go in and update the Wikipedia on this, because they're also crediting it to a guy named Hal Rawson.
Hal Rawson also is part of the American Society of Cinematographers.
Yeah.
I think what we find is film has always done really interesting things. We think everything is Marvel Universe movies, but there's still plenty of movies that are going to IKEA and getting a basket and throwing a light bulb in it and getting some light on someone in an interior. Film is, I think, so much more imaginative on the lighting side of it than theater is. And just, there he is or she is out there in their garage putting something together that they need for the shoot tomorrow. The thing that I always loved in the theater was when I was just starting, the technical director was lighting a show at my college, and he wanted a pattern. And, patterns have grown a lot since the 70s. But he went down to a local hardware store and bought some metal grating that you cover your radiators with.
Oh, yeah.
And chopped all that up and made some wonderful things.
So, hey, who needs Lecos? Just get some kind of headlights there and throw something in front of it.
Strand doesn't need them anymore.
No, Strand definitely
They've sold them all to Fairlight.
Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, livedesignonline.com, Amazon Prime Music, and just about every other podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you were to decide to litigate us, the law firm of Flecht, Fluck, Flair, and Glare, and their paralegal snoots will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to join us next week when we chat about more useless things and explore the crazy shenanigans in our industry.
We are Light Talk, and we are broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and our brand of humor all over the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.